Hey guys, welcome back to the Shades of Brown podcast. This is episode 2. I'm Akash.
I'm Roble.
Today, unfortunately, we're missing Akash. He couldn't make it. He'll be back for the next episode. Today, we're going to have 3 segments. We're going to start with each of our top 10 PPR running backs for the season. And then we're going to have open debate about that and have reasonings for why we have each player at that position. Then after that, we're going to be talking about our reactions to Thursday night's game. We're going to talk about its fantasy implications for the future. And then last but not least, we're going to have our starts and sits of the week for tomorrow's games. And then I guess we can get right into our top 10 running back lists. Roble, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna kick it off with honorable mentions. So Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, James Robinson, David Montgomery, and Joe Mixon didn't make the cut, unfortunately. So at number 10, I got Jonathan Taylor, 9, Najee Harris, 8, Austin Eckler, 7, Antonio Gibson, 6, Aaron Jones, 5, Ezekiel Elliott, 4, Alvin Kamara, 3, Derrick Henry, 2, Dalvin Cook, and number 1, CMC.
All right. I like that. Disagree with some parts, but we'll get into that. So for me, my honorable mentions go Nick Chubb, David Montgomery, Saquon Barkley, and then Jonathan Taylor. At number 10, this may be a hot take, I have Damian Harris. At number 9, I have Austin Eckler. At number 8, I have Derrick Henry. At number 6, I have Najee Harris. At number 5, I have Aaron Jones. At number 4, I have Antonio Gibson. At number 3, I have Ezekiel Elliott. At number 2, I have Alvin Kamara. And at number 1, I have Christian McCaffrey. All right.
What do you
So
have at 4 again?
at number 4, I have Antonio Gibson.
Wow. Okay.
All right. So, if I
Okay.
recall correctly, you had Derrick Henry above Alvin Kamara.
Yes, I did.
So, I would like to hear a little bit about that. So, why do you have him at above Kamara?
Okay, so obviously, let me just take into account Kamara's argument for being below Henry. So obviously, Alvin Kamara was the vocal point of the Saints offense last year. He averaged around 133, 113 total yards per game. He's a great rusher and he's great out of the backfield. But I think his situation is unknown going into this year, especially
That's
with the
fair.
quarterback change. And there's just a bunch of different factors that you have to take into account. Obviously, this could change after week 1 if I see that everything goes perfectly fine. But I'm just taking this into account. And why I have Derrick Henry above him, personally, I think that Derrick Henry's a little slept on this year.
Mm,
PPR wise, he's not the best running back. I understand that. But just from a pure rushing standpoint, them adding Julio Jones means that teams cannot stack the box anymore. I understand the argument possibly about game script and stuff like that. I just think that Derrick Henry will be a force in nature this year, and his factors aren't as unknown as Alvin Kamara's. That's my point.
all right, I see that. See, on my list, I have Derrick Henry at 8. See,
Yes.
I 100% agree with you that defenses won't stack the box, but we have seen in the past that running backs with over 320 carries, I believe, have regressed. Their productions regressed by 40%. Obviously, I don't think it'll reduce by 40%.
Yeah.
I don't think that's reasonable. I think his production will go down. I think it's plausible that he has another 1,800 yards season because of the
Yeah.
17 game extended season. But I just can't see how Derrick Henry, after dropping 2,000 yards and only finishing as the RB3, can replicate that same type of production. So for me, I think that he has to be number 8. He had 21 points per game last season on in PPR formats. I think that's solid. I think that's great. But after rushing for 2,000 yards, you'd expect more than that. I think
True.
I think he will be put into the passing game more than he was last year, but I just don't think it will be enough to put him above people like Kamara, obviously McCaffrey, Zeke, Gibson, Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook. I just don't
That's
see
fair.
I just don't see him in the passing game that much. And then for me, why I have Kamara at 2, I think there's a solid argument you could put him at number 1 after the Saints released Latavius Murray. To be honest, I Obviously, I think his backup, I think his name is Tony Jones, is solid. I think he's pretty solid, but realistically, he's not going to be taking away as many rushing attempts from Kamara as Murray was. So not only is the volume going to go up because of Latavius Murray's departure, I also think his production, I mean, his volume will go up because MT's injured. I think Jameis Winston is going to benefit him because Drew Brees obviously was very, very good even at the end of his career, but he was
Yeah.
better in that short to mid game, and he wasn't able to push the ball down the field. And I think with Jameis Winston at QB, the Saints will be able to push the ball down the field, and this will allow Alvin Kamara to be a better rusher. And then on top of that, he's going to be able to run more complex routes, and his route tree can grow. So that's why I have Kamara at number 2. And also, some more stats just show that he's that good. His production on the ground, like I said, last year only came off of 12.5 carries a game, which is crazy.
Yeah.
12.5 carries is very, very little for a top tier
Those
running back.
how the receptions are rated too, PP.
So
How
12,
important.
he's a lock for 80 plus receptions. We could even see 90 plus from him this year. I think the carries will go up to maybe around 15, 17 a game. So his production will go up in every single category. I think one thing we agreed on both of our lists was McCaffrey at 1, obviously.
Yeah.
30.1 points per game, focal point of his offense, receiving and rushing upside. In 2019, during his 1,000 season, we saw 98.4% snap share, 92% opportunity share, and I think that's just going to be. I think we're going to see a repeat of that, and I think it's just going to be. He's going to be amazing this year, and we're going to see that against the Jets week 100%.
Where'd you have Antonio Gibson at? Just
Antonio
curious.
Gibson, I have him at 4. I
Four.
think I
So
think
good.
and I'm guessing you want an explanation for that. So
Yeah.
I'll start with huge
I want to hear
receiving
here.
upside.
Four.
Huh? Yeah, number
That's
4.
four.
I have him above Aaron Jones, Najee Harris, Dalvin Cook, and Derrick Henry. So I think Antonio Gibson has huge receiving upside. That was a given. We saw that last year. And the reason he wasn't able to put that to full usage was because of JD McKissick being there. And obviously, JD McKissick is still there, but JD McKissick is aging. Ron Rivera has said that he will see a CMC type of role. And that came straight out of his mouth. So I think that the volume will go up, and for fantasy, volume is key, and we know that. Whether it be receivers or running backs, volume is key. And Antonio Gibson last year, where he had 25 plus touches a game, averaged 28 points per game, which I think is huge. And to be honest, I think Antonio Gibson has the biggest upside out of any running back this year. I think he's going to be massive for a lot of people. Um,
So I'll take that Antonio Gibson argument. I rank Antonio Gibson extremely highly this year. I think if you look at the stats, volume wasn't there last year. He only played
yep,
43% of his team's offensive snaps. And in games where he earned 20 plus opportunities, he was the RB1. So that's just speaking if he gets the volume, he's automatically in that elite running back caliber for fantasy football.
100%.
Uh, I just think of that. I just think his issue is also unknowns, but also I think that after week 1, I think I can see my outlook changing on him a little bit. Currently, I have Aaron Jones and Zeke ranked above him. I think that could change, but for
Yep.
now, that's how I have it. I think that what Ron Rivera said and how Gibson's probably going to be the number one guy, and he's probably going to get way more snaps than he did last year. If all of that is true, then look for Antonio Gibson to have a record-breaking sophomore season
Yep. One hundred
because
percent. 100%. I
he
think
has
another
all the
thing.
tools.
Yeah, I think another thing we agreed on was Aaron Jones at 5, right? If I'm not wrong.
Uh, I have him at 6.
You have him at 6. Yeah, I had him at 5. So obviously, I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. Top
Yeah,
5 running back finish for the last 3 years. TD machine, high-powered offense.
yeah.
Last year he split 60-40 with Jamal Williams. I think AJ Dillon, to be honest, I don't think he'll get as many touches as Jamal Williams did. I think if anything, I think instead of having a 60-40 split, I think they'll have more of a 70-30 or a 75-25 because AJ Dillon does not bring that receiving upside that Jamal Williams did bring, and Jamal Williams would be brought in on third downs and sometimes even full drives. I don't think we'll see that from AJ Dillon unless it's a big blowout and they want to rest Aaron Jones. I think Aaron Jones's volume will go up, which obviously, like my other arguments, I think volume equals production. And if the volume is up for Aaron Jones, I think 100% the production will come.
No, Aaron Jones is super slept on.
Yeah,
Like, I don't
100%.
know what's his official draft position, like average draft position.
Average
It's like
draft position, I think, is around, is like the brink of the end of the first, beginning of the second, which I think is a
yeah,
steal. If you can get him in the second, I mean,
exactly.
at this point, if you're not already drafted, I don't know what you're doing. But the people who got him at the beginning of the second it's just going to be a steal. He's a top five running back. He's proven that. And to be honest, it's going to be a huge year from this Packers offense, 100%.
Definitely. I
Uh,
think let me just take the what are your thoughts on AJ Dillon? Like, could he potentially limit some of his carries, or do you think
see,
his role would be pretty minimal?
See, for me, like I said, I think it'll be more of a 75-25 or a 70-30 split. I think Aaron Jones is a premier running back in the NFL. I think it's partly Matt LaFleur's system that allows for more of a split carries. I think AJ Dillon's a very talented rusher. To be honest, I was surprised when
Yeah,
Aaron Jones got re-signed. I think AJ Dillon may take some touchdowns from him. I think he may take some goal line carries. I think time to time he'll come in as a relief back. I think he'll play more of a Devontae Booker to Josh Jacobs type role that we saw last year. I don't think he'll necessarily be what Jamal Williams was to Aaron Jones last year. I think he'll be
yeah,
more low key. I think AJ Dillon won't take as much as he did last year. I mean, as Jamal Williams did last year, 100%.
yeah. Let me elaborate on this Aaron Jones hype that we're both spitting out right now. I think his fantasy average, like over like a 30 game season from last year and the year before that, is 19.2 points per game, which is only two lower than Derrick Henry. So that really puts into perspective how of an elite rusher he is. Obviously, the Packers lost some of their offensive line help. I don't think that will be a big issue. Aaron Jones is a super talented back. He finished as an RB1 on about 43% of his games last year, and is an RB2 or better in 75% of his games. He's a really good running back. I think that if you could, if you were to draft him and you were to get another elite RB2 beside him, you already have one of the best running back cores in your league. So Aaron Jones is just a fantastic player. People need to stop sleeping on him.
I agree 100%. I'm surprised you haven't asked me about the Damian Harris at number 10 yet.
Yeah, yeah. Let's get into that.
So, obviously, very, very hot take. I won't lie. Having him above people like Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, David
Yeah,
Montgomery, and Nick Chubb, I think that's obvious. I think the reason I have them above him is so I'll go with the four people I named before: Nick Chubb, David Montgomery, Saquon Barkley, and Jonathan Taylor. I'll start by um, I'll start by listing the cons for each of those four. Nick Chubb obviously splitting with Kareem Hunt. The receiving upside is limited. I think this offense is going to start passing more with the addition of Odell Beckham Jr., which I think is obvious. Um,
definitely.
that's what I think about Nick Chubb. I think Nick Chubb is super talented. I think if we're just talking about running backs in the NFL, I think Nick Chubb has a very, very strong argument to be top three. And then let's go David Montgomery. David Montgomery, I think, is solid. I think, especially with Tariq Cohen being injured now and being out for 6 to 7 weeks, I think that he will get the receiving and rushing work in Chicago. I think that's huge, but I just can't trust Andy Dalton and a bad O line to give him the proper production he needs. I think he will produce, but I don't think he'll be on the level of Damian Harris, to be honest. And then next we have Saquon Barkley. I think Saquon easily, if healthy, would be top five on this list. I don't think it would be an argument. But the problem with Saquon is injuries. Just like I have Dalvin Cook at 7 because of the injury concern. I'm concerned about Dalvin's knee. I'm concerned about his shoulder. I'm concerned about lots of things.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley, I'm concerned about his knee. He's athletic, very athletic. His game relies on his jump cuts, his stop and goes, and his knee could limit him. And I think he's going to be on limited touches for the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season, and I think that's going to really hinder his fantasy value. And last but not least, we have Jonathan Taylor. I think he's super talented. I think there's almost no, perfect offensive line. I think Carson Wentz is the upgrade they needed at quarterback. Everything is good for him, other than the fact of the running back by committee, the RBBC. I think that really does scare me away from him, because especially now Naeem Hines got signed to a top 10 contract. I think it was today, in fact, that he got signed to that, which scares me a lot. I actually just traded him away in my fantasy league because that scares me. That means that Naeem Hines is going to have a very big role in this offense. So I can't put Jonathan Taylor in my top 10. So to explain why I have Damian Harris above them all, to start, Belichick has said he is getting that workload, right? We know he's going to get that workload. We're going to see it against Miami this week. There are 22 red zone rushing opportunities for touchdowns that are opened up with the departure of Cam Newton. And there's no other running back in that backfield. I think you can say that Stevenson can take some, but realistically, Damian Harris is so much more talented than him. I think that Damian Harris is 100% showed flashes last year, but now with an actual guaranteed workload, he is going to take at least 70 to 80% of those red zone opportunities. And there's no other player on that team who will take those opportunities from him that we have seen that from. And once that happens, we can see a 2016 type LeGarrette Blount season where he gets 18 touchdowns, and in that season he had 230 fantasy points. And if Damian Harris puts up 230 fantasy points last season, he would finish as the RB8. RB8. And Damian Harris, no matter what you say, is more talented than LeGarrette Blount ever was. And Damian Harris can put up more yards. I think he'll have more participation out of the backfield. Except I do think James White's going to take most of that. But I do think Damian Harris will have some receiving value. But I think Damian Harris is going to be league breaking this year. I think he's going to win every fantasy league. We posted this on our TikTok. Pick of the year for me. I think he will win leagues. I think he's amazing.
Okay. I disagree with Damian Harris at 10, obviously. Let me explain my stance. You can't put him over Jonathan Taylor. Here's why. Your stance about the Naeem Hines thing. Jonathan Taylor, when he was RB1, Naeem Hines was RB2. So weeks 11 through 17 is when Jonathan Taylor was declared the RB1. He
Yep.
played 61% of the team's offensive snaps. Hines got the rest of those snaps. Marlon Mack, if you factor that in, I think his role will be pretty limited this year. He averaged around 22.7 rushing opportunities, 139.5 total yards, and impressive 24.3 fantasy points per game. Obviously, the schedule was pretty cupcake for the Colts at the end of the season, but still, those are the numbers that you're getting from Jonathan Taylor. He rushed for over 1,000 yards and 11 TDs. I don't see how that's changing this year. And that's only going to go up when you factor in that he is the number one back in Indianapolis. I can't see putting Damian Harris over him. And then also, I think Damian Harris will be a league winner depending on the position that you drafted him at. So, for instance, before he was announced, where'd you pick him up at?
I
Before
got
he
him.
was
I
like,
got him in the 10th round. I got
yeah,
yeah.
that's a steal. That's 100% a steal right there. I think his draft position changed recently.
I think
I
it's
think
like
he
the
moved.
6th or 7th at the end of the season. Yeah, at the end of the
Yeah,
drafting season. Yeah.
yeah, he got moved up a little bit. Still, it's a steal though, in my opinion. That amount of value in the sixth or seventh round is freaking crazy. But I don't think he's a top 10 fantasy running back yet. Does he have all the upside? Yes. But can he be there? No. And I don't even think he's better than Joe Mixon. Let me explain my Joe Mixon stance. Once again,
Wait, let me refute your Jonathan Taylor point. Then you can start with the Joe Mixon. So
okay.
first with Jonathan Taylor, he was never declared the RB1 for this season. The coach said that it was going to be a running back by committee. Marlon Mack, the season before getting injured, put up 1,300 yards, which was more yards than Jonathan Taylor. Marlon Mack is a very, very talented rusher who will take rushing opportunities from Jonathan Taylor. And when Marlon Mack gets hot, Marlon Mack will be on the field and Jonathan Taylor will be on the sideline. And that's
John
something that you can't ignore.
Marlon Mack is not a better running back than Jonathan
You
Taylor.
how can you say that? He had 1,300 yards the year
No,
before.
we're talking about
1,300 yards. Where was that production from
physical
Jonathan
player,
Taylor?
huh?
Where was that production from Jonathan? 1,300 yards?
Yeah, that's him with the RB1 role. We're talking
1,300
about
yards is
Jonathan
1,300
Taylor.
yards.
We're talking about Jonathan Taylor.
At the end of the
Who
day,
played
Marlon Mack proved himself
45%
a
of his
capable
team snap.
rusher. It doesn't matter if you think that he is a more talented player. At the end of the day, Marlon Mack showed production in the NFL. He did. And
Yes,
I think Jonathan Taylor will have a majority of the rushing role, but I think it'll be a 60-40. You can't say that if the
60-40
coach
with
comes
who?
out and says it's running back by committee, right? That means they're gonna go with the running back that's hot. It's already a given that Naeem Hines is going to have the receiving role in that offense. And
Yes.
we know this. There's no disputing that. Now, when you see Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack, now we have two players in the backfield, one whom they re signed this offseason, Marlon Mack, who they didn't need to bring back. Why would they bring him back if he was not going to have a rushing role on the offense? He is going to have a rushing role, and when he gets hot, he's going to stay hot and he will be on the field while Jonathan Taylor will be on the sideline. And I think that's
Well,
something you
because he
can't
signed
ignore.
a deal
Huh?
for around like $1 million per season on a
He's
team
still.
friendly
Why would they
contract.
bring him
He's not
back? a
taking
million dollars is $1 million they could have spent elsewhere. Why would they bring back Marlon Mack if they 100% believed in the fact that Jonathan Taylor would take the number one role as the rusher?
pretty sure most teams have three running backs on
They
the
have three
roster.
running backs, but they don't sign. No one has a running back that's not on the practice squad that's going to be another rusher. They have receiving backs. We see that. We see that in New England. We see that. We saw that. What's it called? In Jacksonville, they had brought in ETN to be the third down back. We see that third running back. That third running back is usually the receiving back, but instead they brought
Yeah.
in a rushing back. Why is that?
Yes.
And let's not even forget Jordan Wilkins, another rushing back, is still on that roster. They have four. They don't
Yes,
have
and
only
Jonathan
three.
Taylor is the most talented running back out of all those
I
four
mean, yeah,
running
you can
backs.
make
I
that
mean,
argument, but at the end of the day, the production was shown to go to Marlon Mack had more production.
um, the weeks when Jonathan Taylor was the starter, averaged around 11 more fantasy points per game than Marlon Mack during his best stretch. And also, let's take into account how good of a running back Jonathan Taylor is. This is a guy who set rushing records at Wisconsin. His jump cuts, his natural vision for the game, and his natural feel for the game are superior to any Colts running back on that roster. Why wouldn't they put their best guy forward? They want to win. And I already provided the statistics. There's no way that Jonathan Taylor has a worse year than Damian Harris.
And
There's
how
just
is
no
that?
way
With
possible.
less volume and with worse game script, with an offense that brought in a better QB who can pass the ball downfield.
Volume. The splits I provided
The volume is
showed
going to
that
be lower for Jonathan Taylor than it was last year. There's no way in saying that it's going to be higher. The Colts are going to be
22.7.
passing more. The
Him and
Colts are going
Hines
to
are
be
one
passing
two.
more. The Colts have an emerging sophomore wide receiver in Michael Pittman. T.Y. Hilton,
Yeah.
of course, he's not what he once was. They're going to be passing the ball downfield more with Carson Wentz.
They're
They
not going to
have
shift
Marlon Mack,
away
who's
from
coming
running the
back from
ball.
injury. There's no way that Jonathan Taylor's volume increases. His ceiling was shown last year. That's what his ceiling
Disagree.
is. He can't
How
get
is
any
that?
more than that. It won't happen.
Those stretch of weeks, yeah, that's obviously
He's
the
not
best
he's
way
not
of
going to
going
have
in.
five back-to-back games where he goes 26, 26, 26, 38. That's not going to happen again. It's just not. The volume won't be there.
Disagree.
They're going to be passing the ball downfield. You can't disagree with the fact that there's going to be less volume. That's a given.
Yeah,
If
but
they
they're
have a
not going to
rut,
shift
okay,
away
so
from
you
running the
admit there's going to
ball.
be less volume.
Yes, there might be less volume, but he's
So
still I
There's
assume
so
going
you're
to be
saying there's gonna
20
be less
touchdowns.
volume but more production?
I
That's your argument.
mean, no, I mean it's possible for the production to slightly go down and for him to become even more efficient than he
Okay,
was
well,
last year.
efficiency
Although that's
doesn't matter
highly
for
unlikely.
fantasy. Numbers are fantasy.
Yes,
Production is fantasy. So if his production stays the same or goes down, as you said, sure, his efficiency can go up. I think Derrick Henry's efficiency will go up as well. I think that's a really good case you can make. But at the end of the day, their production will go down this season. And there's no denying that.
yes, and I still think he'll become a better running back than Damien Harris. What's your projection for how many rushing attempts Damien Harris is going
I
to
think
get per
Damon
game?
Harris will see upwards of 200 to 220 rushing attempts this year.
How much is that per game? 20?
About the same as what Jonathan Taylor had last year.
15?
Jonathan Taylor had 232 rushing attempts. I think that will. He had a what? Yeah, I think that's about what it will be. 200.
16 game season?
I think it'll be around 200, 210. But I don't think it'll necessarily be his yards that put him above Jonathan Taylor. I think it'll be his
Yeah.
touchdowns. I think for me the biggest argument about Damian Harris is going to be his touchdowns, 100%.
I mean, we'll see how that red
I think
zone
with the
efficient.
rookie QB as
Uh,
well. A rookie QB, they're going to be running the ball a
you saw
lot.
what
Huh?
happened with Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, correct?
What?
Red zone efficiency was garbage,
Yeah,
and he was
well,
one of the best
but
red
red
zone.
zone opportunities didn't open up for Ulair. The Chiefs were a passing team going into that year. They didn't have 22 red zone carries waiting for Clyde
Yes,
Edwards-Helaire to come get.
those 22 might
Who,
become something different. You
who,
don't know.
but that's
You
that's
don't
how
know.
you measure. That's how. But seeing the red zone
I
attempts,
understand.
that's
Yeah.
that's how you measure or project a player's stats. That's how you look at it. I don't know. I don't know if you're trying to change how stats work.
No, no, I'm
You
not.
can't
I'm not.
argue against stats. Like you can't say that's not going to happen. Obviously, it may be a little bit less. It may be a little bit more. That's
Yeah.
how stats work. There's variables to
Um,
it. But based off the stats, there are 22 red zone carries waiting. Ramondre Stevenson may take 2 or 3 or 4, but he is the RB3 on the depth chart. He's
yeah.
not going to see the volume. He is not. He's a literal practice squad running back. He's not going to
Yeah.
go take reps from Damien Harris. Damien Harris has that backfield for himself. James White will be in on passing downs. Damien Harris will be the best rusher on that team. He will have the goal line carries, and he's definitely going to be one of the top 10 running backs in PPR. I think
Wait,
he,
so James White's gonna take away receiving
yeah,
opportunities
yeah,
for Damien.
100%. Yeah, that's a given.
So just from a rushing standpoint, most of his volume is gonna be coming from touchdowns.
Touchdowns, yep.
Okay. Okay. That's fair. I don't think he's top 10. And also,
You
let
didn't
me make
have
my
him in your
argument.
honorable mentions.
I don't have him in my honorable mentions either. I don't think he's better than James Robinson either. And also, let me explain to you why Joe Mixon has better fantasy value than Damian
Ay,
Harris does.
ay, ay.
Okay, so Jim Turner was the Bengals uh O line slash run game coordinator last year. He was possibly one of the worst run game O line coordinators in the league. Frank Pollack was hired just this year. Him replacing him, Frank Pollack worked with the Bengals. That's when Mixon had his best rushing season, by the way, and led the AFC in rushing. And he has and the offensive line upgrades that the Bengals made this offseason. You can only expect for Mixon's numbers to go up. Obviously, the biggest concern with Mixon is injuries. Mixon, since he's entered the league, still hasn't finished a full season yet. But still, this isn't a concern to me. Full off season's rest, plus Mixon taking time to work out his body. You've seen from his off season workouts, he's getting stronger and he's working on strengthening his muscles.
Dude, you don't even seem like you believe this yourself.
Okay, listen.
Realistically, right?
No,
If
no,
you
listen. Let
if
me
you
finish.
look
Let me finish. Let me finish, bro. Let me finish. Mason's not in the same situation that he was in last year. Giovanni Bernard is no longer with the Bengals. This means Mixon will have a full three down back workload. If you combine that with that he's been the running back 8 on a points per game basis for the past 2 of the last 3 seasons. Plus, when you factor in that Giovanni Bernard is gone, Mixon's value is going to go up, and it's already extremely high. Plus, Mixon's shown that he's actually a really good receiving back out of the backfield.
All right.
You in games where he struggled rushing the ball, he received over 6 targets, which is extremely good for a running back. And also, Mixon averaged 27 touches per game in his last 3 games before he got injured, which is one of the highest touches per game rate in the league.
All right.
So if you combine all those things that I said, plus the fact that Mixon is an elite running back, everything's in line for him to dominate this season, and he has massive upside.
All right.
That's my
So
point.
I'll start by refuting a couple of your points. To start, if you look at last season, obviously he had the 42-point game against Jacksonville, cupcake defense, cupcake week. He had 31 touches that game, 151 yards, and 2 touchdowns for 42.1 fantasy points. Obviously, a
Yeah.
great game. Most running backs had good games against Jacksonville last year. You look past that game, he averaged 12.5 fantasy points per game in a PPR format on 25 touches a game. 12.5. No matter whether Giovanni Bernard is there or not. Sure, Giovanni Bernard is gone. We had, what, 2 receptions a game, 3 receptions a game. He's not seeing 30, 35 touches a game. It's just not going to happen. The volume at 25 plus touches a game, that's not going up. That's staying the same. And there's nothing that's changed. They didn't. The O line help you're saying they signed some people. They signed some scrubs. Of course, they may be upgrades over what they had last year. Last year, it was a mess. Like
Yeah.
anyone knows, the Bengals O line was a mess, and whatever they added will be an upgrade. But how much of an upgrade really is it? The he had games where he had 24 rushing attempts for 59 yards. That's less than 3 yards a carry, man. like, I don't know what to tell. Like, these games, he's seeing 25 touches a game. If you give this to, let's say, Antonio Gibson, we saw Antonio Gibson 25 touches a game, 28 points per game. But Joe Mixon is putting up 12.5 points per game on 25 touches. There's no argument for him to be near the top 10. For me, I have him around 17, 18. I don't think there's a real argument for him to be in the top 15, top 10. I've seen people put him in their top 7s. It's ridiculous. It's not true.
Okay.
It's not going to happen. He's injury prone, bad O line, terrible game script with a horrible defense. He's in a division where there's 3 top 7 defenses in that division. So 6 times a year he is playing top defenses. It's just not a good look in general for his entire season. It's just not gonna. Joe Mixon is not good.
Let me address the point about the points per game. Okay, so first 3 games of the season, Joe Burrow's just getting adjusted to the offense.
So that means he would have more touches, right? Where's the production?
No, doesn't mean
What,
that.
what, what do you mean no? So you're telling me the QB is getting adjusted. So
Yes,
what were they doing? Were they just like hiking the ball and then running around with it? Not giving it to Joe Mixon? No. He had 19 rushing attempts, 16 rushing attempts, 17 rushing attempts. He
yes,
put 6 points up. Then he put 12.6 points up. Then he put 8 points up
yes. And then after the Jacksonville game, he put back-to-back 15 points per game. Correct?
on 31 touches, and then he put up on 20 touches. Yes.
Okay. I don't care about the volume. That's what he's getting. Let's be realistic
So that's
here.
his ceiling.
That no, that
Yes. So you're
volume.
telling me he's gonna get more than
No,
25 touches a
listen,
game this
listen,
season?
listen. That volume with the improved situation that he's in,
How's he in an improved situation?
the offensive line help that I mentioned, Riley
What?
Reef, Jackson Carriman, a better running back coach, run game coach. Issue with the Bengals is that their run play design was trash last year. Mixon would often get stuffed at the line before he even touched the ball. Like it was embarrassing. So if you factor this in with he's going to be receiving better running opportunities, plus the offensive line help. There's only way for Mixon to go is up this year. There's no way he has a down year. It's not possible.
It
Last year
is.
he was
It definitely is, actually. 100%
it's
is. The three teams in their division has only gotten better. So that's 6 games a year where he's playing the
Ravens just
Browns, he's
lost.
playing the Ravens,
Ravens
and he's
just
playing the
lost key
Steelers.
starter.
Huh?
Ravens just lost uh
Marcus Peters. How's that going
Peters.
to affect the run game? Okay. So, we're gonna go
What's
on,
the
right?
defense
Okay,
in
so against the
general?
Steelers, against the Browns, and against the
Yes.
Ravens. 2 times each a year, that's 6 games, right? Six
Yes.
games. Alright, let me pull up the Bengals schedule real quick for us to talk about, right? Alright. So we'll start. They start against the Vikings, which I think is a pretty good game for Joe Mixon. He'll probably put
Yes.
up a good game. Next, he plays the Bears. He's not going to do well. Next, he
Definitely.
plays the Steelers. He's not going to do well. Then he plays the Jaguars. Yeah, everyone does well against the Jaguars, okay? So we're 2-2. Then, after that, he plays the Packers. Then he has the Lions. Then he has the Ravens. Then he has the Jets. Then he has the Bengals. Wait, no. He has the Browns. Then he has the Raiders. Steelers again. And then if we look at the end of the season, right? End of the season, terrible. It's the worst schedule I think I've ever seen. He plays the Steelers, Chargers, 49ers, Broncos, Ravens, Chiefs, and then Browns.
Yeah.
Where's the production at? 4 games? 4 games, he's going to finish the top 15 running back.
No.
Okay.
You're automatically excluding the fact that Joe Mixon's actually a really good running back.
Yeah, of
And
course.
he will
And
put
he's
up
been a good running back. He has the
and he will
talent.
put
No
up
one's denied that. He
put
was
up
amazing at Oklahoma. He
he'll
was,
he'll put up respectable numbers against those defenses.
your
Obviously
camera's your camera's messed up.
it is
Yeah.
uh,
I don't know, it's like completely pixelated. All right, we're good. We're good.
okay. So let me address this fact. Let me address the point that you mentioned about the schedule. Obviously, yes, we have to take that into account. But let's not act like Mixon isn't going to be able to do anything against some of these teams. For instance, the Browns. Usually, Browns versus Bengals games are pretty high scoring. Giovanni Bernard put up 24 points against the Browns last year. You're acting like Mixon can't do the same. Okay, and
The
also
Browns offense is only I mean defense has only gotten better. Miles Garrett was absent for that game.
yes, okay, that's perfectly fine. But
What do
Giovanni
you mean it's
Bernard,
perfectly fine? So you're telling me a top 3 defensive player in the league was gone and that doesn't impact a
yes,
person's
that's obviously
performance?
going to make a difference, but it's still not going to take away that Mixon's going to put up respectable numbers
Yeah,
against the Browns.
respectable numbers as in 13, 14 points per game.
You never know. You could
You
possibly
you
put
can
up
see,
20.
you can keep saying you never know, but we saw last season against good defenses, he put up 6, 12, 8, 14, 15.
What if the
And that
Bengals
he's
take
proven
strides as
that's
a
what he
team?
can do.
What if the Bengals take strides as a team?
They can take strides as a team. Their defense has only gotten worse. Sure, they added 2 offensive line pieces. They're mediocre offensive linemen, probably better than the scrubs they had last year, 100%. But that's not going to make them take that many strides as a team. If anything, they've added Jamar Chase. They're going to pass the ball more because their defense has gotten worse. Without William Jackson, their defense has gotten worse. They're going to have to pass the ball more to stay in games. Joe Mixon's volume is not going to go up from 25 touches a game. He has a hard schedule. He has a terrible O line. He's not going to be able to be that good. There's really nothing else to it. I don't.
That I provided on a points per game basis, he's been running back 8 two of the past 3 years. Let's put that into perspective. Mixon's not even finishing full seasons. Yeah, he's putting up extremely good numbers.
Yeah, and if you're talking about last season, of course that 42-point game, he only played 5 games. Well, five or was it 5 or 6? Pretty sure it's 5, right?
Mhm.
No, he played 6 games. If you play 6 games and you have one game where you have 42 points per game, of course
Yeah,
you're gonna 42 in a game. Of course you're gonna be RB8 for the year if you only played 6 games. Anybody would be.
points per game basis though.
Yeah, points per game that averages all your points and divides it by the amount of games. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
still
Take out the
15
42,
games.
he's not finishing top 20.
Yeah, but still, let's 15.5 per game. Let's
12.5.
no no
12.5.
no. That's just
12.5.
last year. That's just
Yeah,
last
last
year.
year was
You-
12.5. So the most
you-
recent year with the most recent close to roster that we've seen, he put up 12.5 points per game.
Without the 42.
Yes, without the 42. I think we've had a really good
Okay.
argument over this. I think we should move on. I think we've both provided our sides. I don't think we're going to change our opinions on that. Um, but we'll see. We'll see. Especially tomorrow, I think against the Vikings, a weaker run defense. We'll see what Joe Mixon can do, how much volume he will get, and how that Bengals as a team would look. We'll see that. I think we should talk about one more player on both of our lists. He goes by the name of Najee Harris. Lots
Yeah.
of upside. Think he's gonna be great. I think we're both pretty high on him. I
Yeah.
think you should go first.
Okay, I have him at 9. Only concern with Najee Harris is Steelers' offensive line. Okay, so let's take into account that James Conner is obviously a significantly worse running back than Najee Harris.
Yes.
Steelers were 28th in rushing attempts, 32nd in yards, and 30th in running back fantasy points per game via the run, 30 in fantasy points per rush. Those are horrific stats.
Mhm.
Obviously, Najee is a significantly better running back than James Conner. I already mentioned this. But still, you have to take into account the Steelers' offensive line struggles. Now, where I think Najee's upside lays is the volume. He will get that three down back role from day one. Like, first game, I forget who the Steelers are playing. Expect Najee to be one of the highest in snap share in the league already from the gate. And if
Mhm.
we combine this with the volume that he's getting, there's no way that he has a bad season. There is not possible for Najee Harris to have a bad season.
Yep.
Alabama games, he didn't do much work out of the passing game. I think he's been working on that off season. I looked up the stats. It wasn't that impressive per game. The amount of out of the backfield work he was getting from like QB like check downs and stuff like that. It wasn't that impressive, but those numbers will go up and expect him to probably at least rush for over 1,300 yards at minimum and get double digit touchdowns. I think that's the
Yeah,
minimum.
I completely agree with you there. I think he'll see upwards of 330, 320, some over 300 carries. 100%. I
Yeah.
think 300 carries is, and I think he'll see probably over 350 total touches if you include receptions. I think Najee Harris is going to be amazing this year. I think with Ben Roethlisberger obviously coming back, he looked better. I think he's in better shape. He fixed his diet. I believe we saw that news in the offseason. I think Ben Roethlisberger is going to be a little bit better than he was last year. He was pretty bad last year, to be honest. I think he'll be better. I think Deontay Johnson's going to take strides. I think all of this coming together with the receiving core being as stacked as it is, I think not they're going to be moving down the field, up and down the field really quickly. I think the only problem, like you stated, was the O line and is the O line, and it still is the O line. But I think moving up and down the field, Najee Harris is going to be part of every single play, whether that be through blocking, receiving, rushing, and he's going to be on the field all 3 downs, like you said. The volume is there, and that's the biggest thing for me. The volume is there, and that's why I'm at number 6. I think he's going to be explosive. I think running backs, usually, Derrick Henry the exception, are usually the best and show how good they are in their first 1 and 2 years. And we're going to see that from Najee Harris 100%. Um,
Looking at playing week one. The
um,
Bills.
they're playing the Buffalo Bills, who are very bad against the run, by the way.
Yeah.
So we're gonna see tomorrow. We're gonna see the volume. We're gonna
Yeah,
see. We're gonna
I
see.
think the game script might be an issue that game, but I think still
But he's
fantasy.
involved in the receiving game. He's big
Yeah,
time involved in there. So
ESPN projects him to score around 14.6
that's
points per
nah,
game. I
nah.
think that's a bit under. I think I'll get around closer to 18 or 20
I'm
with the
putting I'm
touchdown.
putting Najee Harris at 24 points tomorrow.
Mm,
I
mm.
think Najee Harris is gonna be big time, big time. I love Najee
I
Harris.
mean, I had Hilaire last year, and he rushed like crazy over the Bills. And most running backs do have good game against the Bills.
Yep.
Only issue is how will that Steelers offense play? If they struggle, Najee's points might be slightly affected, but still, he's going to be a very good running back this season.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep. I think that about concludes what each of us think. To
Hmm.
recap some of the hot takes, I think they came from my side mostly. I think there was one from your side, I'd say. So for
Yeah.
me, it was obviously having people like Najee Harris and Antonio Gibson over Dalvin Cook. I have Dalvin Cook at 7. Like I said, I'm concerned about the injuries. He had a shoulder injury in training camp that is one of those injuries that can get re injured very, very easily. He's a physical runner that can get injured really quickly. I think he'll only play upwards of 12 games this year. I think he can still finish as the RB7 even in 12 games. I'll state this now. If Dalvin Cook plays 17 games, he can finish as the RB1 easily.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's even arguable. But for me, I have to factor in the injury concern. Obviously, only missed 2 games last year. I think that I don't know, man. The injuries just scare me off. That's why I have him at 7. Then
Also, we
obviously,
discussed this. We
huh?
discussed it. When you take out like his boom games against, I think it was the Lions and another
Packers,
team,
Packers, Packers, and
Packers.
Lions.
Yeah,
Yep.
his points per game was around like 20, something like that. There are a lot of other running backs
Who have the opportunity to put up a lot more than that this year.
that have the opportunity to put up a lot more than that, are healthier, and play in potentially better offenses. I'm not going to name who, but still, Dalvin Cook's injury concern is a big, big red flag. So
Yep.
that's keep that in mind. But
I think you
yeah,
had him at 2, right?
yeah, I had him at 2.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
just because he just has this ability to just go off
Any
in
given
certain
week, he's like
games.
Devonte Adams. Any given week, he can give you that 40 pointer,
Give me that.
and that's huge for me.
Siri just went off.
Oh
Like,
yeah, but yeah, that's huge.
I
Um,
think the stats, these stats real quick about Dalvin Cook. Yeah, he ranks second among running backs in fantasy points scored per game, including 24.1 last year. That's
24.
including those boom games. Him and McCaffrey both are versatile, have little competition, and only have room to improve.
Mhm.
So that's why I have them at 1 and 2. And their situation isn't as dicey as some other players. But I think out of any two backs in the league, if you were to predict two that would go off this week, I think it's Dalvin Cook and McCaffrey.
Against the
Definitely.
Jets and the Bengals. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, Bengals and Jets, two poverty franchises. Both of them I expect to exceed 30 points per game, 30 points in their respective games.
Yep.
Yeah, they're gonna have a day, but
Yep. 100%. 100%. And then I think my last big hot take was Damian Harris at 10. Obviously, we disagreed on that, but we will see. I think Roble does agree though that Damian Harris 100% pick of the year. If you got him past round 6, you got
definitely.
somebody who is going to win you leagues. You got somebody who is literally going to be the reason you win your fantasy league if you do and you have him on your team. Just big time. And I think the last hot take was from Roble, Joe Mixon. I guess it's not a hot take. A lot of people do have him in his top 15. Personally, I think that's
Not a hot
ridiculous.
take.
I
I mean, that's fair. Him at
personally,
11.
I just don't see it. But we can agree to disagree. I think that's big. I think right now we'll move on to the next segment, our reflections on the Thursday night game between the Dallas Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 31-29, the Buccaneers won on a field goal by Ryan Suckup at the end on a drive by Tom Brady. I think it was a great game. What do you think?
Okay, so couple takeaways. I'm gonna start on my buy low candidates, Mike Evans and Ezekiel Elliott.
100%.
Some huge backlash came out about Elliott and how he didn't have any role and all this stuff. All that stuff's blasphemous. He was expected to have a limited role tonight. I think just from the game script point of view, me and you were talking about how playing against the Bucs, they're probably gonna be down early. So they're gonna look to pass the ball. Dak threw the ball, I think 54 times,
It's
60
ridiculous.
times, something like that. Something crazy like that. The issue was the volume. I think if he plays, when you look at his schedule, he's gonna play way worse teams than the Bucs. I think that volume's gonna go way up. There's no need to panic about Zeke and also Mike Evans. A lot of people calling Mike Evans touchdown dependent, blah blah blah, acting like this guy hasn't had like 5 consecutive years with 1,000 yards
I think.
receiving, something like that. His consistency is ridiculous,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a really bad game. I think he was dealing with a little injury too. I saw
Yup.
him hopping over the sideline a little bit. No need to panic about Mike Evans. He's still really good. And then my next takeaway, I'll let Akash take it after this.
Wait, let me
Is,
comment on Zeke and Mike Evans real quick.
yeah,
I agree 100% with Zeke. I think if you watch the game, Zeke was blocking in the backfield most of the time. I think that the volume really wasn't there during the Bucs game, and I think that was mainly because the Bucs were scoring so quickly. I don't think there's many other offenses that they're gonna play that are gonna be like that. Also, if you look at their next 10 games, they're not playing another team that made it to the playoffs in the next 10 games. So they have a very easy schedule, and Zeke is in for big, big games. He will still finish as a top 5 running back. He is very, very good. And I think
yeah,
if you can get him for cheap right now, get him. If you have him, do not sell him for low. That is the biggest mistake you will make this season, and that's going to be the reason you lose games if you do it. So don't do that. Next, Mike Evans. I have him in one of my leagues, and I'm probably going to lose the week because I'm playing Amari Cooper, and I had Mike Evans. And obviously, I'm mad about that. 5 points is not good. But at the end of the day, like Robles said, the consistency is there. The consistency is there. We've seen it. The consecutive 1,000 yard seasons we saw last year, he was Brady's favorite target. Last game, he was shadowed by Trayvon Diggs the entire game. Trayvon Diggs is very talented. I think he's very good. Mike Evans was dealing with an injury. He had some not bad drops. It looked like he wasn't showing that much effort. I don't know. Either way, the game really didn't work out for him. I don't think the Bucs really needed to distribute the ball that much against that Dallas defense. And to be honest, I don't think Gronk is gonna get that many targets that he did
yeah,
that game. I think Mike Evans will have that role later on. I think that was just a fluke. I think Mike Evans obviously isn't a wide receiver one like he was in years past. In fantasy, I think he's more of a mid to high end wide receiver two still, and I think he is very solid. I don't think you should sell low. I don't think you should do any of that stuff. I think you hold on to him, see how he does next game, and if this happens again next game where he sees really low targets and bad production, then I think it might be time to have some worries. But right now, calm down, hold on to your players. Don't panic over week one. It's not that serious. Obviously, it might be infuriating that they messed up your fantasy week, but at the end of the day, you just got to deal with it and you got to move on.
yep. And
Yeah.
one more point about the Mike Evans situation. His wide receiver compatriots, Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin, both had excellent games. So this is nothing to worry about, in my opinion. Gronk also had above average game for his standards. I don't expect him to have that big of a role on the offense normally. So Nothing to worry about Mike Evans. And then my second dynamic from that game was the CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper conversation. Both of them played really, really well. Cooper obviously having the better game of the two,
Yup.
but still, I still think that Amari is number one in Dallas. Although I do see CD having potentially better games than him, I just think that Amari is still Dak's favorite target.
Hmm.
He was running excellent routes last night, and his two TD catches were ridiculous. So I just think that he still is that number one guy in Dallas. I don't think CeeDee Lamb is there yet, although potentially he could be. But both of these wide receivers have really good value at the moment. So I'm
Yeah.
just in terms of fantasy wise, I don't think there's too much that separates them. So yeah, that's all I gotta
Yeah.
say.
I agree. Obviously, me and you had that
Yeah,
bet on Amari Cooper, but I took the double or
yeah,
nothing. We'll see next week. But
yeah,
obviously, Amari Cooper did end up beating CeeDee Lamb out. I think 100%, 16 targets is insane. I think it was what, 13 receptions, 139, and two
yeah,
touchdowns. That's great. Really good production. Obviously, that won't happen every week, but I think he's gonna be a target monster. I think CeeDee Lamb he also had a lot of targets. He had two or three bad drops, to be honest. I think if you
yeah,
add in those drops plus those yards, he was gonna be over 30 points as well. So if you see that, like, both these receivers, especially with Michael Gallup being out now for what's that, 3 to 5 weeks,
yeah.
these guys are going to explode, like
Mhm.
explode in these next weeks, and it's going to be crazy. And to be honest, we also I'll go into the next topic. Obviously, those two are really good, and their stock is going to keep going up. Both explosive. Mari Cooper, great route runner, all of that, and Dak is back. We know that. We saw that. I think there's really not much else to say. Probably gonna win comeback player of the year. He looked great. He's explosive. 400 yards. He was fine with 50 attempts. He looked great. Um, I think the next thing I want to touch on is Blake Jarwin and Dalton Schultz, the two tight ends for the Cowboys. I think with Michael Gallup out, they're going to be the 3 and 4 options in that passing offense. Maybe with Cedric Wilson getting in there a little bit. But either way, I think that they're going to be solid options. I think Blake Jarwin had what, 6, 7 receptions last game, something like that. I'm not sure.
Both had 6, 7.
Huh?
I
It was,
think Schultz,
yeah. Wait, let me check that real quick. I don't want to
Schultz had
give
6, 7. I
false
think
info.
Schultz had,
Um, Wait, hold up.
I remember Schultz had like 6 for 46.
Dalton Schultz had 6 targets, 6 receptions, and then let's check Jarwin real quick. Jarwin, he had three receptions for 20. So I think Dalton Schultz is gonna be a top 12 tight end, a person you can start until Mike. I think he's a startable tight end. In deeper leagues, maybe 12-man leagues, you can start Dalton Schultz, and you can be confident that you will get 8 to 10 points from him each week, going forward, based off of what we saw last night in the volume of that passing attack.
Definitely. And also, I think he's really good touchdown value also. So I think Dalton Schultz overall is just a pretty good fantasy option. Like
Hmm.
somebody has him in our league or something like that. And just one of your star tight ends end up getting injured. He's a really reliable tight end. Great offense, favorable conditions with Michael Gallup now injured, and high touchdown upside. There's nothing you can go wrong with him.
Hmm.
And then my final point that I'm going to jump on is Antonio Brown is a legit wide receiver to play in every single league possible. I mean, seriously, this guy, I don't think people expected him to regress, but there were a lot of question marks over the volume. I know you were really high on him. People were concerned about that wide receiver split or whatever it is. Last year, he started off a bit slow, but he slowly worked his way into the offense, learning the playbook. And I think the Atlanta game was his best game of the season, where
Hmm.
he received over like 12 plus targets, something like that. He is a serious wide receiver two play this year in fantasy. Wide receiver two is a little high, but a definite flex option. But with high wide receiver two upside, I
Mm-hmm.
think he's really good. And it's in 10-man, 12-man leagues. Definite must start for the rest of the season.
100%. I agree with that. I love that take. As you know, I've been high on Antonio Brown since even before preseason. I
Yep.
I I saw training camp footage. He looked great. He looked like he still had that route running we saw when he was on the Steelers. Obviously, I don't think he'll have the production he had when he was on the Steelers. I think his step has diminished maybe just a tiny bit, but he is still talent wise a top 15 receiver in the NFL. And I don't think that's debatable. And I think with
Yeah.
Tom Brady at the quarterback and with that talented of an offense, he is a must start, like you said, in all 10 and 12 man leagues. And he has, in my opinion, not even high wide receiver. I think he can be a low end wide receiver one option. I think he will be the number one option on that team. He's going to surpass Chris Godwin by the end of the season. And I think he's going to be solid. And then the last point I'd like to make about the Thursday night football game is Rob Gronkowski. I think Rob Gronkowski was great. 29 points. He had two touchdowns, good amount of targets, good amount of receptions. I think that's great. I don't think that'll be consistent. I don't think Patriots Gronk is back. I think Gronk is going to be a top 8 tight end. I think he'll be solid. It'll be the same as last year where he finished at about tight end number 8. I don't think it's going to be anything more than that. I think he's going to be solid, but I can't see anything like a top 3 tight end finish. There's going to be nothing like that. But
Did
yeah.
Cameron Brate lead that offense?
Cameron Brate and OJ Howard, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure Cameron Brate is still there.
Okay. I think Howard did, yeah. I mean, well, that's just more targets for Gronk, I guess, but he was super inconsistent last year. And he's just not reliable for me. I think, especially with his age, there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. I think he only really has touchdown upside.
See,
If you take that away, if you take that away, I don't think he's that good of a
he had
fantasy player.
13 points without the touchdowns.
13
Actually,
points,
15. 15.
but
No, 16. No, 17, actually.
that's
17.
that's what Mike Evans not receiving that many targets that game. I think if you divert some of those targets away from Gronk to Mike Evans, I don't think just if you look at the season, like from just like a from let's say how many points Gronk's gonna average throughout the whole season. I don't think it exceeds like per game. I don't think it exceeds 15. Like there's no way that's
It
possible.
won't, and I agree with that, but
I think it's around 10,
I think we're at
12
a
range.
point. I think we're at a point with tight ends where 13 points per game is a top 8 tight end in a start on most teams, unless you have someone like a Waller, Kittle, Kelsey, Hawkinson, Pitts, or Logan Thomas. I think after that, you're in that conversation where you're Higby, Gronk. You're in that little conversation there where you're
Yeah.
Higby, Gronk, Noah Fant, and you're in that talking like right there. Those three after that top six. So I think those three will be the 7, 8, 9, and I think they're going to be solid options for most teams if you don't have that top six.
Yeah, top six. Yeah,
Yep.
and that's definitely a good point.
Um.
Get into our next topic.
Yep. Our must starts and must sits for the week for week number 1. So Cowboys versus Buccaneers already gone. I told you on the TikTok to start Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, and I said Mike Evans. I'll take the loss on that. Mike Evans didn't pop off. Obviously, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown had huge games. So make sure to check out the TikTok at SOB underscore podcast. I'm telling you guys, if you guys follow that, you guys will win your leagues. We have big news, up to date news whenever it comes out, posted on the TikTok and telling you the fantasy implications of it. So make sure to go follow there for up to date fantasy news. All right. So we'll start with the Seahawks versus Colts. I think that For the Colts, must start. I think Michael Pittman is a must start. I think Jonathan Taylor, obviously, must start. I can't really see much upside other than that. Um, Maybe in 14-man leagues, maybe Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
I'd still say no, 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 not Carson Wentz. So I'd say the must starts on the uh what is it called? The Colts would be Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman. I think Michael Pittman is in for a huge game against a weak Seahawks defense, and he no T.Y. Hilton. He's going to see the majority of the targets. He's going to be
Yeah.
big time. I think Naeem Hines is a low end flex option as well.
I
Uh,
think the Seahawks.
yeah, you take the
So,
Seahawks.
uh, Russell Wilson, obviously,
Yeah, must start.
elite quarterback. DK Metcalf and Chris Carson and Tyler Lockett.
Must starts.
Those are my four.
I like
I
Gerald
don't
Everett
really.
as well. I like Gerald Everett here. I think Darius Leonard, yeah, Darius Leonard's obviously very talented linebacker. I think he may be covering Gerald Everett, but I think Gerald Everett can be
Yeah.
a pretty good tight end option here. I think we'll see in this game his value for the rest of the season. I'd say if you have an open spot on your bench, pick up Gerald Everett if he is on waivers. I think he has very high upside depending on what we see from the Seahawks offense. It came out from the offensive coordinator that Gerald Everett and Eskridge are the third options after Metcalf and Lockett. So we will see what his role looks like tomorrow, and based on that, we're gonna have to take um, what we see from that to see going forward with Gerald Everett. Jags Texans. I think there's a lot of must starts in this game. A lot of must starts. First of all, both defenses must sit. Do not start the Jags or Texans defense. Please don't. You're gonna lose the week. They're gonna have negative points. This game's gonna be a lot of points. Terrible defenses. To be honest, two poverty teams. Okay, so
You think the Texans are going to score a lot?
I think the Texans will score a lot. So I first of all for the Jags must starts for me. Trevor Lawrence. I think Marvin Jones. I think Marvin Jones may end up being out though. He's questionable. I'm pretty sure still, or unless he lost his injury designation. I need to check that out. Laviska Shenault and DJ Chark all starts, and obviously James Robinson must start as well. Texans, only one person to start. That one person is Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks, I am very, very high on him, guys. He's a wide receiver, mid tier wide receiver two, high end wide receiver two. Huge. He's going to be solid, consistent 13 to 15 points per game for you. He's going to have those games where he goes for 30. He's a great player. Pick him up in all leagues. And
What are your thoughts on Tyrod Taylor?
Tyrod Taylor, I think obviously he isn't the premier QB. He isn't even a mid tier QB. I think he's a serviceable QB. In my opinion, I think he's like Teddy Bridgewater. I think if you're fine with Teddy Bridgewater throwing the ball to Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy and you're confident in starting them, you should be confident in starting Brandon Cooks. I think Tyrod Taylor, to be honest, if he didn't get injured, Herbert wouldn't have stolen the job from him last year. Tyrod Taylor was playing pretty well. I mean,
Yeah.
he wasn't the greatest, but they wanted to keep Herbert on the bench, and obviously ended up being the right decision to bring Herbert out. But at the end of the day, Tyrod Taylor was a serviceable QB, and I think he'll be if his only option to throw to is Brandon Cooks. At the end of the day, Brandon Cooks is going to have production, and I think that's big time. So
Okay.
yeah,
Well, I'll take Eagles Falcons here.
yeah,
Start off with the Eagles. Jalen Hurts must start 100%. I think he's going to torch the Falcons defense.
mhm,
Miles Sanders, a must start.
mhm,
Although I do have questions about him, still a must start. And then Devontae Smith, solid flex play. Also Dallas Goddard.
mhm.
I think is a must start that week. I think he will have a really good game. Uh, we'll see what his role looks like for the rest of the season, but I think against the Falcons he'll have a really good game. I miss out on anybody?
I think that was good for the Eagles.
Yeah.
I'd like to add on about Miles Sanders. I don't think I don't think Miles Sanders is a must start. For me, I've been low on Miles Sanders. I've been hating on him. My friends know this. You know this. I don't like Miles Sanders.
Yeah,
Miles Sanders for me is brink top 20 fantasy running back. The coach literally came out and said he is going to be subbed out on every third down. Every third down. If you look at the advanced stats, he was one of the worst receiving backs we have seen in years last year. He was awful. And then they drafted one of the best receiving backs out of college. They have Boston Scott. The receiving upside isn't there. He only produced on the ground when he had a big play. In those games where he put up over 20 fantasy points per game, or I mean fantasy points in a game, he had a 30, 40 yard rush. And when he doesn't get that, he doesn't produce. And for me, I just can't trust him. I don't think he's a must start. I think if you have someone like a Damian Harris, a Miles Gaskin, start him over him. I don't think Miles Sanders is that good. Get rid of him. Sell high on him before he busts and nobody wants him. And that's all I'm gonna say. I do not no Miles Sanders bad, bad. Miles Sanders equals bad. That's what you need to get in your head. I guess I'll take
I
Falcons.
like that take. I like that take.
I think for the
And the hate.
Falcons, obviously Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, amazing. He's gonna be a top 3 wide receiver at the end of this year, fantasy wise, and I think he's gonna be great. I think he will torch this Eagles secondary. I don't think Darius Slay is gonna cover Calvin Ridley whatsoever in any way,
Listen,
shape, or form. Obviously, and then I think Matt Ryan is a start this week. Obviously, if you don't have an elite QB on your team. And then I think that Mike Davis is also a good play this week. Because I don't think Wayne Gallman will be fully into the offense yet. And also, high scoring equals high production for most players. And then I also like Kyle Pitts. And I think Russell Gage is actually a low end flex
yeah,
option in deeper leagues, in 12
about
man
to say
leagues.
that. Russell Gage potentially might have a really good season.
Yep, I
You
love
know,
Russell Gage. 700 receiving yards last year as the wide receiver 3 on that team. If you include Austin Hooper, he was the fourth option, and he still had 700 yards. So we'll see this year. He can put up over 1,000 yards. He's big time. He's big time.
yeah,
Um, Move on to Chargers versus Washington. I think this will be a very defensive game. Um, but I think the players that are in this matchup are going to be favorable in PPR just because of the fact they aren't touchdown dependent. Even though that many points won't be scored, I think these players will still have solid weeks. I guess I'll take the Chargers if you want to take the football team. All right.
yeah,
So Chargers, Keenan Allen, PPR machine. Obviously, start him. Austin Eckler, if he plays, which I think he will, play him. PPR upside. Even if he doesn't score, obviously we knew, if you drafted him, you knew he's not going to score that many touchdowns. You knew that his production will come from receiving, and it will come from his yards, and he's still going to get that against the football team. Um, I think Justin Herbert, to be honest, if you have a guy like Matt Ryan on your bench, I would consider starting Matt Ryan over Herbert this week. And I think that's because he's playing the football team, who's a very, very good defense. I think the scoring is going to be limited. I don't think the touchdowns will be there. And I think Justin Herbert will have a down week to his standards. All right, you can take the
yeah.
football team.
Take the football team. Okay, must start. First off, let's start off with Terry McLaurin. I think Curtis Samuel's out this week as well. Big receiving upside. Obviously, if you have him, you know that you have to start him. I think he'll have a pretty decent week. Antonio Gibson, we already elaborated on this. Huge receiving upside as a running back. His role is going to only expand this year. And I want to start Ryan Fitzpatrick. I don't think it's the best matchup for him.
Mhm.
I think Chargers actually have a surprisingly really good defense this year, especially with a few players returning back from injuries. I think his deep ball strategies that he likes to use may result in a few interceptions.
Fitz
I
magic,
want to look
baby.
to start Ryan Fitzpatrick and uh, tight end. What's his
Logan
name?
Thomas.
Logan Thomas. I think he's a must start this week. I think He'll get you around 12, 15 points this week. Nothing crazy, but yeah.
Yeah, big time. Logan Thomas gets a lot of targets. He's a PPR machine. I agree with you. I think J.D. McKissick with Curtis Samuel out is also a flex play this week. I think Curtis Samuel's now on the injured reserve actually. So McKissick is actually a really good waiver addition you guys can get in your leagues. He's going to be a solid flex option, and he's going to get a lot of receptions. He'll give you 10 points per game easily at that flex option. So make sure you go out and get him if you need a flex. And he's just a good store on your bench if you have. We never know. Injuries happen in football. If you get an injury on your team, McKissick can be a good person to replace whoever got injured. We can move on to Steelers versus Bills. There's a lot of very good implicate fantasy implications, players that can be good in this game. I'll take the Steelers. You can take the Bills if you're good with
Uh,
that. Steelers. I think Najee Harris must start. Weak run defense they're playing. I think the game script will favor this. I think this will, in my opinion, I think this will be a low. I think that the Bills will be an explosive offense this year, but I think the Steelers defense will limit them, so the Steelers will still be able to run the ball. I think Najee Harris is going to get 25 plus touches. He's going to be solid. I think Deontay Johnson is a start this week. I think Claypool and Juju are sits this week. I don't think Juju will produce. I don't think Claypool will produce. Um, I think Eric Ebron, I believe, is their tight end still. I don't, I don't believe in him. Sit him this week. So yeah, realistically, I think you should only be starting Najee Harris and Deontay Johnson this week on that Steelers offense.
yeah, I'll take the Bills. Josh Allen must start any week. I actually think he's matchup proof. Start him
Josh
any
Allen,
week.
I
Yeah.
agree. I agree.
Stephon Diggs must start this week. Also, we all know how good he is. Probably the most consistent fantasy wide receiver along Devontae Adams last season. And then Cole Beasley, I think, is a sneaky flex play this week.
Mm.
I think it'll be difficult for him to accumulate a good amount of yardage, but I think he's a decent flex play. But I wouldn't necessarily say he's a must start. I take that back. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's a must start either. I think him and Gabriel Davis are actually really good sleeper options you could have, especially in deeper leagues, because I think Gabriel Davis at any time can have a big play. He's like Marquez Valdez Scantling from the Packers. Big play potential. I think Josh Allen's going to take strides. I think Gabriel Davis and Cole Beasley, I think Cole Beasley, especially with the amount of receptions he got last year, can be solid for a flex option. I just don't think against a strong Pittsburgh defense is the week to start them. I don't like either of the Buffalo running backs. I really thought Zach Moss would get the starting job, but it looks like it'll be an RBBC again, running back by committee. I just can't trust any of them. Josh
Yeah.
Allen's going to take red zone carries. Just not a favorable thing. So personally, I think Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs are the starts for this week for the Bills. They're going to be starts every week. They're must starts any week, no matter who they're playing. Um, Next,
Take
we.
the 49ers lines.
Yeah, you start on this one. You start on this one.
Yeah. So must starts. Take the Lions. Take the Lions here. Not too many must starts on the Lions offense, but I will say do start DeAndre Swift. He's cleared to play this week. He practiced yesterday. I think he is a must start. It's a really good fantasy upside. We'll see what the split looks like with Jamal Williams this week for uh further down the road. And TJ Hawkinson is also a must start. I think he's a must start almost every week.
Yep.
And those are the only two players I'm taking from the Lions.
You said Swift and Hawkinson, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I'll add in Tyrell Williams. I think Tyrell Williams is a low end flex option this week. I think he's solid. He's the wide receiver one for the Lions. I think the year before he signed with the Raiders, he had that unfortunate knee injury when he signed with the Raiders. He was going to be the wide receiver one for the Raiders last season, but unfortunately he had that injury. I think Tyrell Williams is solid. I think he's a big play threat. I think he'll be a low end flex option. And for the Niners, Raheem Mostert, I think is a must start. I don't think Trey Sermon is necessarily going to get that role yet. I'd say sit Trey Sermon this week. Wait, he will get that role. Eventually, he will get that role. But right now, believe in Raheem Mostert. Start Raheem Mostert. Next, Brandon Ayuk against a weak Lions secondary, weak Lions defense. He is a start, 100%, and I believe that. Next, I think Debo Samuel is also a start. I think, and then obviously George Kittle's a start. George Kittle's a start every week. And to be honest, I'm sitting Garoppolo. Even though I think Garoppolo can have a good game, I think Garoppolo is going to make mistakes. That's how he
I'm
is.
starting Garoppolo.
Huh?
I think I'm starting Garoppolo this game.
See, I think he is a start. I think he'll give 18 a game, 18 points or something like that. But
Yeah,
realistically, his ceiling is limited just because of the
yeah,
fact that I think he's going to make mistakes. Even though it's a weak line secondary, I think he'll still make interceptions. I think they're going to run the ball a lot. So I don't think he's going to
yeah,
have that much like
yeah.
the production you'd want from a QB.
Okay.
But
I
he'll
can
be
see
he'll be
like
solid, but I think he's still a sit. I don't
Last
think
trial, I think is a must start. I
yeah.
could see like a 220-yard, two TD, one interception game.
Yeah, something
On
solid
like
like that.
15
Yeah,
points.
100%.
Nothing crazy. Like,
Next we'll go Vikings Bengals. I think we should start speeding through this a little bit. So Vikings, obviously we have Dalvin Cook. I think is a start. I think Kirk Cousins is a start. I think Justin Jefferson's a start, and I think Adam Thielen's a start. I think Adam Thielen is going to be huge this week, in my opinion. I think Adam Thielen's going to be really good, um, touchdown wise. Um, I think Adam Thielen's going to be like really big this week, touchdown wise. Lots of touchdowns are going to be scored. He's the best red zone target, especially with Irv Smith getting injured. So look at that. And then I think his name is Conklin, their tight end. I think in really deep leagues, 14-man leagues, he can be a tight end option this week. And then you can take the Bengals.
I'll take the Bengals here. I think Joe Mixon's a must start this week. I'm also gonna sit Joe Burrow. Don't know what the circumstances are gonna be like. I think he's a sit for this week, although he could have a good game. And then I also am starting Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins as flex options. I don't think Chase is going to have that great of a game, but I do think one of Boyd or Higgins is going to have a pretty solid game with a touchdown. So, yeah.
Yep, I agree with that. I think Jamar Chase isn't there yet. I think you can't start Jamar Chase at flex if you desperately need it. I think he will have 5, 6 receptions, 50 yards, something like
Yeah.
that. I don't think he's gonna have anything crazy. But I think as the season goes on, his role will grow because he has that connection with Joe Burrow. Next we have Browns versus Chiefs. Oh no, actually no, we have Jets versus Panthers. I just skipped a game. My bad. Jets versus Panthers. I actually like a lot of. Let's just go each take a game instead of
Yeah.
alternating. So I'll go Jets versus Panthers. I think Corey Davis is a must start this week. I think that with especially Jameson Crowder now out with COVID, Corey Davis is gonna be a target hog this week. Corey Davis must start. I think that Zach Wilson is he's a risky play, but he could boom. He could boom against a weak Panthers team. I think other than that, not really much you can start on the Jets. Panthers though, lots of starts. Obviously Christian McCaffrey. Actually no, bench Christian McCaffrey. Nah, you got to start Christian McCaffrey. Start Robbie Anderson. Start DJ Moore. Start Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold will boom this week. I like him. All right. Um,
Okay.
Cardinals Titans.
Cardinals Titans. There's a lot of players
A lot
here.
of points too.
Yeah, I'll take the Titans first. Tannehill must start. Derrick Henry, Julio Jones, AJ Brown, all must starts for the Titans. Then we're gonna go with the Cardinals. I am starting Chase Edmonds, Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, potentially AJ Green or the rookie wide receiver that
Rondell
they
Moore.
got, yeah, this year. But those are risky plays. I'm starting those three though, for
Yep,
sure.
I agree. I think just to add on really quickly, Julio Jones, his his stock has increased a lot, especially with the news about AJ Brown, his 2 knee surgeries in the off season, and his meniscus. He did the two meniscus surgeries. Obviously, we know meniscuses, those surgeries can re-injure really easily when they pivot, when they make those cuts as a receiver that can tear at any moment. And we know that AJ Brown has been sitting out of practices like he did last year, and that's when Corey Davis emerged. So I think Julio Jones will have a bigger role in this offense than most people think. Julio Jones will be big this year. All right, next I'll take Browns versus Chiefs. Lots of fantasy implications here. I think if Odell plays, and I think this is a big if, especially with what their head coach said, he's a start this week. Nick Chubb, I think, is a start. Kareem Hunt is a flex option or even RB2 option this week. I think Baker Mayfield is also a start this week. I'm sitting David Njoku, I think his name is. I'm also sitting Austin Hooper. I I just think there's a lot more tight ends this week with more upside than Austin Hooper. And then the Chiefs, obviously a lot of starts here. Patrick Mahomes, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think obviously we have Tyreek Hill and also Travis Kelsey. I don't think you should be starting anyone like McCole Hardman or anything like that. I think those four are the starts. You start them every week. Nothing more to it. Um, you take Dolphins
Uh,
Patriots.
we got Dolphins, Patriots. Start off with the Patriots. I am starting Damian Harris.
My boy.
I'm also starting it's that one wide
Jacoby
receiver,
Myers. Jacoby
Jacoby
Myers.
Myers. I'm starting Jacoby Myers. I think he's actually a really good fantasy play. Super underrated receiver. His ADP is really low. So if you can pick him up, go ahead and pick him up. And for the Dolphins, it's a little tricky. I'm not starting Tua. I'm starting Miles Gaskin, potentially Mike Gesicki,
Yeah.
and then Devontae Parker and
Jalen Waddle.
Jalen Waddle are potentially flex plays.
I like
At
Jalen. I like. So I'll add on. To be honest, I think that Jacoby Myers is sit this week with Xavier Howard shadowing him. I think Jacoby Myers for the future is going to be very good. I just don't think Xavier Howard is the right matchup for him. I don't think Xavier Howard is a good
Yeah.
matchup for most people actually. But and then I think that Mike Gesicki is a must start. I agree. Miles Gaskin a must start, and I like Jalen Waddle as well with Gilmore out. I like Jalen Waddle's speed. I think Marquise Brown had a really good game against the Patriots last year. I think Jalen Waddle's more just a way more talented version of Marquise
Yeah.
Brown, so I can see Jalen Waddle having a good game. Um, Next Broncos Giants. This is actually I'm almost sitting everybody in this game other than maybe Jerry Judy. I'm literally I'm sitting Teddy Bridgewater. I'm sitting Cortland Sutton. I don't believe in Cortland Sutton against Bradbury. I just don't see it, especially first game back off that knee injury. Just don't see it. I don't think Javonte Williams is going to take the role yet. I don't like Melvin Gordon against that defense. I think Judy will have a solid game. I think Judy's a good flex option. And for the Giants, in my opinion, if you have a solid RB on your bench, start him over Saquon this week. Saquon is not going to have the production you think he will. I think if you have to start him, he will still put up RB2 numbers, but
Yeah.
don't expect that 25 points per game that he will put up when he's healthy. It's not going to happen, especially against a good Broncos team. So I'd say you can still start what's his face? Start Saquon. Other than that, bench everybody on that Giants team. So Saquon and Judy are my only starts for this game. Sit everybody else. Do not buy into this game.
Kenny Galladay potential flex option, but
Can't see
not
Galladay putting up numbers against that secondary.
not the best week for him.
Yeah.
Um, Take the next one, Packers Saints. A lot of fantasy value on both sides. First, start with the Packers. I'm starting Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, and potential flex plays slash borderline tight end option. Um, Robert Tanyan, and I think Alan Lazard actually might have a really good game.
I
Potentially,
don't know. Allen Lazard really fell off
debatable.
with the addition of Randall Cobb, but I can see
But
that.
yeah, I think for some reason those backup wide receivers always have a good game against Saints or something like that. It's kind of odd. And then for the Saints, ooh, I'm starting Alvin Kamara,
Hmm.
Marquez Callaway.
Against
Um,
Jair?
I think he's gonna have a good game. I don't know about Jameis Winston though. I
I'm starting. So I'll add on to you. I think I'm starting Jameis Winston. I'm starting um,
don't
Alvin
know about
Kamara. I like Marquez Callaway for the season. I like him a lot. I think he can be a low end flex option even this week. But
yeah.
he do not expect the 15 points he may put up after this because it's not going to happen this week against Jair Alexander. It's just not. Can't expect that from somebody going up against the number 2 corner in the NFL. It's not going to happen. So, buy low on Marquez Callaway if you can after this week if he has a bad game because Marquez Callaway is going to be very valuable.
You're only starting Kamara or in Bridgewater.
Kamara and Winston.
Win-
So,
Um,
yeah, Winston.
Bridgewater.
Um,
I don't know about Winston,
huh?
but I can
Yeah.
see him having a pretty decent game.
Next, Bears versus Rams. Okay, so I think Montgomery, you're gonna have to start him because he's still gonna put up RB2 numbers, but don't expect a big pop off game. It's not gonna happen against that Rams defense. I think Allen Robinson's a sit this week. I don't see him going crazy against Jalen Ramsey. Just not gonna happen. With especially with Andy Dalton throwing in the ball, so I think David Montgomery's the only start on that Bears offense. And then I'm gonna have to say for the Rams, Matthew Stafford has actually been very bad against the Bears in his career. He hasn't done that well, so I'm sitting Stafford, and I think Woods and Cup are still good wide receiver to low end wide receiver to high end flex options. So I'd start them. But one person I'm starting must start is Tyler Higbee. Tyler Higbee in the Rams defense. Big starts this week. Huge, big time. Higbee is going to be great. Top 5 tight end this week.
Okay, I'll take the
Last one?
Ravens Raiders.
Yep.
I'll take the Ravens Raiders Monday Night Football game. Start off with the Raiders. Uh, mm, Eric Carr, I'm on the fence with, but I am starting Darren Waller.
Mm-hmm.
Ruggs is not a good option this week.
Brian
Look,
Edwards.
you
Brian
know,
Edwards.
Brian Edwards too potentially, and I don't know Josh Jacobs. It's a bit stingy also,
I don't know. I
but
don't like Josh Jacobs or Kenyon Drake this week, to be honest.
you don't have too many options. I think you do start Josh Jacobs, but Derek Carr, I think he'll have a mediocre game against the Ravens, so I'm gonna say sit him.
Yep. So I
Although I
think
am very
Darren Waller's the only real start. Solid
yeah,
start on that Raiders offense this week.
I am high on Derek Carr though for the rest of the season,
No,
but
I agree with that.
this isn't the game. And then for the Ravens, their running back situations a bit
Latavius Murray.
a bit questionable right now, but yeah, I
I
think
called that,
Latavius
by the way. Check the TikTok. We
he's the
called the
yeah
Latavius Murray signing before it even happened. Check that
yeah
out. Like I said,
what
we're
they
up
call
to date. You could have picked him up when he was a free agent, and you would have had a player that is now an RB1 on a run first team. Think about
yeah
that. Go follow the TikTok at SOB_podcast. It'll be linked in the description.
yeah what was I on about they have like they have like three solid
Four. They have
1,000
Tyson Williams, Devontae
yeah
Freeman, Le'Veon Bell, and Latavius Murray.
yeah
So I don't think
and
any of them are
three of those
starts.
guys have hit 1,000 yards rushing in the season before,
Yeah, other than
so
Tyson Williams. Yeah.
pretty interesting there. I think I'm starting Mark Andrews. I'm starting Lamar Jackson, and I'm not looking to start any Ravens.
Week 1, Sammy Watkins, baby. Start him against the
Taking,
Raiders.
I'm taking Marquise Brown too, potentially. I think
I
I'll have a
like
pretty
Week
good
1
game.
Sammy Watkins, guys. It may be a meme, but who
Who knows?
knows? It could win you your week. If you are looking for a flex player, you don't have one, start Sammy Watkins. You have nothing to
Yeah,
lose. Shoot.
not bad, but
But yeah, you have nothing to lose there. So, yeah, I think that about covers all the games this week. I think we had some good debates today, good discussion, solid episode. So I'd say that's the end of the podcast, guys. Thank you guys for listening. Go follow our TikTok at SOB_podcast. We post on there every day. We'll give up to date things that will win you your fantasy league. I'm telling you, it will win you your fantasy league. Also,
Yep.
just want to add in get Damian Harris, the GOAT. Okay. After that, that's it for today. I'm Akash.
I'm Roble.
And that's it for today, guys. See you guys in the next episode.